Hey everybody, my name's Chad DeBolt, and I first want to thank you for taking this video course on SEO. To kind of tell you a little bit about myself, I currently own an SEO company in the Philadelphia area, and we work with independent business owners such as network marketers, small businesses, all the way up to multinational corporations, doing all their SEO strategy and campaigns. And the one question that I seem to get a lot, no matter who I'm talking with, concerning SEO is, what the heck is SEO anyway? So hopefully this first video in this course is going to kind of go over that, answer any of the misconceptions or questions that you might have, and hopefully you'll go away from this video, this first video, at least having a high-level overview of not only SEO, but how it kind of works, the inner workings of it. So without further ado, let's go on. The first thing we're going to talk about, we're going to go back to philosophy class in college, if you remember that, or I'm going to dazzle you with a question. The question is, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's around to hear it, everybody knows the next part of it, which is, would it make a sound? All right, now no one, make sure nobody here is going to hurt themselves trying to ponder the meaning of life or anything like that. I just wanted to kind of get you in the mindset of kind of where we're gonna go. So if you had the greatest website on the planet, like my man the Dos Equis guy, who's awesome by the way, if you had the greatest website on the planet, could people find it? And what I mean by that, and kind of why I wanted to start off with this question, is I've come across countless people, clients, current clients, past clients, potential clients, everybody I basically talk to that has a website. They usually fall under one or two different roads that they've gone down. The first one is they go out and they spend just an insane amount of money on a website. They get, you know, some web design shop to build it for them, or whatever, and they're very proud of their website, and their website looks fantastic. But unfortunately, no one's coming. There's no leads being made. There's no phone calls being made or email forms being filled out, or really any traffic at all. And you know, obviously, no fault of their own, the owner of the website's pretty mad, because it's like, I just dropped $5 grand on a website or 10 grand on a website, and I don't have anything to show for it. In the same sense, you know, you might not spend 5 or 10 grand on a website. Maybe you built your own website, but you know what? You put sweat equity into it. You worked really hard, maybe after work at night. You know, you learned WordPress. You know, you're up to your eyeballs in plugins, and you know, you think you have a really nice looking site. You put a lot of work into it. You're proud of it, and again, no one's going to your website. And pretty much, if you're in any sort of business, the only reason why you have a website is to make money eventually. And without visitors, you can't make money. Unfortunately, people aren't aware of the pretty common inner working details of how SEO or the internet works. The thing that makes me really upset is when people are told by the web development company that they bought their website from that, oh, your website's SEO optimized. It's SEO optimized. Well, but they don't even explain to you what that means. And unfortunately, the owners of the website hear SEO and they automatically think, oh, I'm going to show up in Google all over the place now because my website's SEO optimized. And unfortunately, that's not the case. We're going to go over in the next couple slides what exactly SEO optimized is. There's a place for it, what it means, but it isn't, unfortunately, going to get your website #1 in Google or anything like that. So let's keep going. So what the heck is SEO anyway? So SEO basically stands for search engine optimization, which I'm sure most of you already know. That is just kind of nerd talk for basically getting your website to rank #1 in Google for any of the words that you would like to rank for. So I always say, okay, if I'm trying to sell blue widgets, I would love to be #1 in Google when anybody typed in blue widgets. That's search engine optimization. You're optimizing your website for the search engine. Okay. Now, one misconception that just kills me, and I want to get out in the open right away, is SEO is not AdWords or PPC or pay-per-click. Okay, if you see here on the diagram, the sections that are labeled A are pay-per-click ads or PPC ads, and since this is a screenshot of Google, Google names their pay-per-click AdWords. Okay, now you obviously, I'm sure everybody knows at least a small bit of how that works, but basically you pay, you bid on what you would pay for every time somebody would click your ad, and then if you're the highest bidder and you have the best ad and all that kind of stuff, you get ranked higher. Okay, now what we're talking about, SEO, is the one section that's labeled B. Okay, and in a roundabout way, you can't really pay to be number one. You have to put some effort into it. Now you have to pay for tools or to a service like myself or something like that to get there, but you don't have to pay per click or anything like that. I could probably do a whole course on the difference between pay-per-click and SEO and why SEO is better, and of course I'm biased, but the one thing I want to kind of bring to your attention, the one point I'll talk about is the difference between pay-per-click and SEO is most people nowadays, they may not know exactly how pay-per-click works, but they do know enough to know that you have to pay something to be in those ads. Okay, I mean, even my mom knows that. So that's pretty safe to assume. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, there's like a weird psychology type mindset that I call it the used car salesman enigma, and that is basically, when people go look for a car, they usually go to the car lots on Sunday or at night. And the reason why they do that is they don't want to be bothered by a salesman because they're not really ready to buy a car. They just want to kind of browse around and make their own decision. They're in information gathering mode. But their fear is if they go during business hours, they'll pull in and a salesman will jump out of the bushes and try to sell them a car straight away. And we all have been there, and that stinks. So it's the same way with pay-per-click. If I click on your ad, I might be the absolute #1 most laser targeted, incredible potential customer for you. Your product or service might be the answer to my prayers. But when I click on your ad and go to your site, my guard subconsciously is automatically up. And that's because I know that you just put something out for me to come to your website. So obviously in return, you're going to expect something from me. And I may not want to give you anything. I don't want to fill out your dumb email form. I don't want to call you. I don't want you to call me. I don't want to download your PDF. I'm just trying to find information, right? So what that does to your sales process or your sales funnel is you're putting extra steps in the way of that person ultimately giving you money, however that works out, whatever your sales funnel is. Okay, because you now have to overcome the stigma of I just paid for you to be here. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, the exact opposite happens when you're #1 in the organic listings, which is the section labeled B. All right. Now, I always say Google, everyone thinks Google's in the search engine business, which is true. But in reality, Google is in the reputation business. And what I mean by that is if you're #1 for whatever the term is that you're trying to rank for, if you're #1 in the organic listings, okay, so top of section B, what that means is Google's telling the person that's doing the searching that out of the 8 bajillion different results that could possibly be shown, your website is the absolute best choice for what that person's looking for. Okay, the reason why Google's the biggest company on the planet is because they've perfected their algorithm to give you the most relevant results as fast as humanly possible. If you remember the internet a while back, when it was still new, when we were doing stuff on Alta Vista and Web Spider or whatever, I don't even remember what it was called, Netscape and all that stuff, the results were terribly irrelevant to what you were trying to search for. And so when Google came along and their algorithm actually gave you relevancy in your results, that obviously is the greatest thing on the planet. So they are basically staking their whole name and reputation that your website is the best possible option for that person. Okay, so what does that all mean? So when I click on the top listing in the organic results, that website already has automatic street cred from Google. It's got the best testimonial and the best referral that anybody could ever have. It's from Google. So now you're automatically looked at as an authority in that, for that keyword or that niche. Okay, so now your message or your KPI, which stands for Key Performance Indicator, you have a better chance of having your KPI convert. You have a better chance of someone downloading a report or filling out a form or watching a video or whatever it is, because Google's basically saying like, hey, you should probably listen to these people because they're the best choice for what you're trying to look for according to us. Okay, you don't get that with pay-per-click. So you can see, I mean, there's a lot of very heavy thought process behind why you do what you do online, and it's not just about, oh, well, I can get here for this amount of money, or oh, this might take 3 months to get #1 for, and you know, whatever. There's a lot more than that. So you know, hopefully if you're in business and you're thinking of your business as a business, you'll eventually see that SEO is a smart investment. It's definitely something everybody should do to various levels. You know, obviously if you don't know how to do it or you don't care to do it, you should hire people like me or my team, or find a good SEO company or person to at least give you some pointers and point you in the right direction. So last thing I want to talk about, the difference between pay-per-click and SEO, is this is called the golden triangle, and you may or may not have seen this before, but basically what this is a heat map of where people's eyeballs go when they're looking at a Google search results page. Okay, and then so over on the right, you'll kind of see through the shading. That's where the AdWords ads are placed for this search page. I don't even know what the term is that this person was searching, but over on the right is the AdWords or the pay-per-click ads. Over in the top left, where all that activity is going on, it looks like a volcano. That is the #1 result in the natural rankings. And as you can see, everybody immediately goes there. Why? Because of what I just said earlier, is that everybody knows that that's the most trustworthy option out of everything that you could possibly click on that page. The very top left is always going to be your best bet to start. So that hopefully will just give you some factual proof of what I'm talking about here. Okay, this is called the golden triangle, and what this basically is oh, dude, I don't even know. All right, this is called the golden triangle, and what this basically is a heat map of where people's eyeballs go when they come to a Google search results page. So over on the right hand side, you'll see, if you could kind of see through the shading, that's where the pay-per-click ads are on this one on the right hand side, where that little glob of blue is by itself. But over on the left, you'll see the thing that looks like a volcano is basically the #1 search in the organic listing. So this is just kind of like a visual representation of what I was just talking about. You know, people automatically go right to the organic listing. They know that it's their best bet to get the most trustworthy information for whatever it is they're looking for as fast as possible. So that just sort of drives home what I was just saying. So there's two forms of SEO that we're going to quickly go over. The first one's called on-page SEO, and you guessed it, the second one's called off-page SEO. So on-page SEO is basically anything you can like physically do to your website that will help Google index or read your website. Okay, so the name of the game is you want Google to be able to index every single page you have on your website, meaning it has to be able to find it and then read it and then put it in its like little library that it could pull from when it's drawing information to show search results. Okay. Great on-page SEO, if you can imagine. I always say it's like, you know, putting out, you know, really nice Thanksgiving Day spread of food, or what, you know, rolling out the welcome mat and bringing out the fine china, and maybe if you were like me in my house when I was growing up, there was that one room where you weren't allowed to go whenever unless it was for special occasions or you had company over. If you're like that, you'd definitely be able to throw a party in that room. But basically what you're doing is when the Google Spider gets to your website, you want it to have such a homecoming, welcoming committee that the Spider says, man, this is like the greatest place to hang out. I'm going to look in every single room here, and I'm going to remember this place to come back to later. Okay, that's sort of what on-page SEO will help you do. Now there's all just different nooks and crannies and idiosyncrasies and little things that you can do that you know, classifies on-page SEO. But the main one is meta information. Okay, now this code here may or may not look like alien language. But basically this is how Google sees your website. So we see all the pretty pictures and formatted content and all that awesome stuff. Well, Google sees all this stuff. And in there's code that tells it, you know, the title of your website, what do you want to call your website, what do you want Google to reference your website as. You want to put your keywords in there a little bit. Your description, which is when you're on a Google results page and you see the, you know, there's 10 listings. You see the link, and then there's that small little paragraph, that little blurb underneath each listing that sort of tells you about the site. That's on-page SEO. The keywords that you want to be associated with, that's on-page SEO. This is just one example, but this is the most common one, is dealing with your meta information. If you're doing working on WordPress, all this stuff's super easy because there's like a billion plugins that can help you do this. If you're not on WordPress and you're like an old school HTML or something like that, you can have your webmaster kind of work that in, but it's definitely not a big deal. So if someone tries to charge you a ton of cash to do it, don't do it, because it's literally like 10-15 minute things tops. So some on-page SEO no-nos. These are just 3 things that I've had to deal with in the 5 or 6 years I've been doing SEO for clients. Just common mistakes or misconceptions. Some of these you might already be like, yeah, Chad, I know that. That's, everybody knows that. But I just wanted to make sure, you know, everybody's kind of on the same page here. So the main no-no is to have a website that's built totally in Flash. Now, if you don't know what Flash is, then you don't have to worry about it. You probably don't have a website in Flash. But Flash is basically, you know, when you go to a website, and it's usually like the artsy-fartsy websites, like the photographers or, you know, people like that, web designers, graphic designers. But a Flash website's like when you go there and stuff moves all around and it's like real interactive, and if you like click on something, like something over on another side of the website does, you know, moves or whatever, and it's like a movie basically. The whole website's like a movie. That usually is done in Flash. Point of reference, though, is important to see. I'm saying 100% Flash. Now that means that it's okay to have some Flash on your website. And normally what the case is when you have your main like header graphic or banner or whatever you want to call it, like your main little masthead, a lot of people have really cool Flash headers, but then the rest of the page and the rest of the site is, you know, an HTML or WordPress or whatever. That's okay to have a little bit of Flash. What I'm talking about is a whole website in Flash. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, like I just mentioned, Flash is basically a movie. Okay? Google, unfortunately, reads content. It doesn't read movies. It can't read movies. There's just, I mean, maybe one day it will be able to, but it can't right now. So what does that mean? So that means if your website is a whole one big gigantic movie, your website's invisible to Google because it has nothing to reference. It has nothing to index, if you remember what we were just talking about. Now, if you have a little bit of Flash and most of it's content or text or HTML, that's perfectly fine. But having it totally in Flash is basically your website's totally invisible, and it will never be visible until either Google decides to learn how to read videos or until you change your website. All right, image-heavy websites. Again, this doesn't mean that you can't have images on your website. Okay, every website I think on the planet has an image at least, but it's the same thought process. You can't have 90% of your website be images. I've had clients that have asked me to rank websites that the whole entire website is one image. Even like the content, it looks like a normal website, has a couple paragraphs of content on the homepage, but then when you try to like hover over it, it's an image. Now, it's not as bad as Flash because we're able to utilize the alt tag, which is alternate tag, which is just a couple words to describe to Google what the image is about. Okay, so you could put your keywords in there, but it's not nearly enough content for Google to be able to properly index your site and get an idea of what your site's really about. Okay, so again, it's totally cool to have images. Obviously, everybody has images. Just don't go nuts and have like the majority of your website have images. Finally, password protected websites. Okay, this one's really easy to remember. If a person can't get to a part of your website without having a password, then Google can't get to that part of your website without having a password. Okay, so it will never be indexed. Now, again, it's all relative. If you have like a membership site or part of your website is like a membership site, that's totally fine. It's okay to have password protected parts of your website. It's just you can't have the whole thing password protected. And you're probably thinking like, who would do that? You'd be shocked. People are like so paranoid of other people stealing their content that I've come across people that it's password protected their whole entire website. Okay, so again, I just don't want it at the end of the day to somebody say, well, Chad didn't tell me you can have a password protected website. I'm telling you, makes sense. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but those are basically the 3 no-nos of on-page SEO. So now let's go to the like really fun stuff. This is off-page SEO. Okay, this is where I make predominantly all my money is off-page SEO. Now, you may or may not have heard about the new Google algorithm updates and all that stuff. If you haven't heard about them, you are going to hear about them in about 2 videos. But everybody's out there saying like SEO is dead. You should just bail on it. It doesn't work anymore. It's not, it's not really how you do things. A lot of gurus and every, network marketing, internet marketing, online marketing, whatever, everybody's saying SEO is dead. Now, I'm not a guru. I never intend to be a guru, but I'll tell you what I know that my 30-person SEO team does, and it's still exactly where the war is won online. If you want to rank and compete with the big boys online, you do off-page SEO. Now, is it different than it used to be even 2 months ago? Absolutely, and we're going to talk about that. You do have to do a couple, new things, new twists, or it's not as easy as it used to be, but that's actually a good thing because all the loafers have totally given up on SEO and moved on to other stuff like Facebook or wherever, Twitter or something. So that leaves a lot of opportunity for the people that take the time to educate themselves, and it's not really that hard once you start to get to know certain, the basic fundamentals of Google and how it works. It's not that hard, but basically, again, I just want to drive home the point that this is still where the online war is won. Okay, so we just talked about that. Slightly different now after Panda and Penguin, which is the Penguin's the one that just happened as the time of this video 2.5 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or something. So this is how I explain to people what off-page SEO is that are not technical. Off-page SEO is basically like an online popularity contest. Okay, so if you can imagine back to high school, so that would be imagining further back for some than others. But if you can remember, shake the cobwebs out, remember high school and how the whole popularity thing worked, how you get popular in SEO is you get votes from other websites that say, hey, your website's actually pretty cool for whatever, blue tennis shoes or blue widgets or something. And a vote in online world is getting a backlink from another website. So a backlink is, your website sells blue tennis shoes and my website sells tennis shoes. And I say, hey, if you're looking for blue tennis shoes, you should check out this other site. Here's the link. Okay. And then that points to your website. Now, what's extremely important is the links have to be one-way backlinks. Now, what do I mean by that? So I'm linking to you, and I'm saying, hey, you're all right in my book. I vote for you for blue tennis shoes. your popularity contest. Now, you cannot link back to me and say, hey, you're pretty swell yourself, Chad. I'm going to link to you for tennis shoes, because those links just negated each other. Okay. Now that's been the case for a long time. So again, I don't want to, bring you back to the stone ages of SEO, but some people still don't understand that. So it's important to kind of know that. So it's important to get only links pointing to you. You do not ever want to point to anybody else in this part of the strategy. Okay. There's a more advanced part of the strategy that you do link out on purpose to people, but that we're not going to cover that in this course. But for right now, you basically don't ever link to anyone to make it easy, and have everybody link to you. That's basically what one-way backlinks is. Now, I think we're going to go over this on the next slide here. But on top of having the links only point to you, the words that make up the links are important as well, and we're going to get into that and why that's important in a second. And that's called anchor text. But two of the things here I put in parentheses that kind of go into what you have to do now, the new strategy of SEO, is social signals is just another type of backlink. And a social signal is any type of reference to your website or to your company or to you as a person or your actual URL or anything like that on any of the major social platforms, and we all know them. So it's like the YouTubes, Facebooks, Twitters, like Tumblr, StumbleUpon, all those. Okay. Anytime there's mentions of you or your brand or your site or anything, that's a social signal, and it still counts as a backlink. You want to get as many of those references about you or your brand or your site as possible. Okay, Google's taking the whole social thing more seriously now. They've been saying that they've been taking it seriously, but they haven't. But they finally have kind of come good on that, and now they are. And then the last thing about it, the anchor text is diversity. Okay, you got to diversify what your links say. Just as long ago as maybe 2 or 3 months ago, if you wanted to rank for the word blue tennis shoes, you would just go and get like 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 backlinks that all just say blue tennis shoes, and you would rank for blue tennis shoes. Now there's other varying factors, but you would rank for blue tennis shoes. Well, now as of the Penguin update, again, which we're going to cover in another video, you really have to spread out actually what your anchor text says. Now, you can still include your keyword in your anchor text, but you have to include some other stuff. And here's a little trick, the first insider secret. All you really need to do is when you're building your link and your anchor text is in a sentence, say like in an article or a blog post, instead of just highlighting your keyword and making that the link, highlight the 1 or 2 words that are in front of your keyword and 1 or 2 words that are in back of your keyword in the sentence, and make that whole thing the link. Okay, so and you just do that every time you build links. And what that does is it still counts for your anchor text, but it also is a foolproof way to diversify what the anchor text actually says, because you're going to have a different 2 words in front of and a different 2 words in back of the anchor text every time you post out content. All right, so that's just kind of like a really quick good way to make sure you're following the whole diversify your anchor text issue now. So we're talking about anchor text. So anchor text is basically the word or words, the phrase that actually make up the link. For example, everybody's been on a website or a blog or something, and it says you come across click here. It's usually blue. Then you know that that's a link that goes somewhere. So click here would be the anchor text. Okay. And Google reads the word that makes up the link and will give you 1 vote, like I said, for your website for that word or phrase. And the best example is if you go and you Google the phrase click here, Adobe.com is ranked #1. And the reason why Adobe.com is ranked #1 is because they have about a quadrillion links out on the internet that say click here, because every time somebody wants to download Adobe Reader or Adobe Acrobat or PDF, needs to read a PDF and it needs to download something or whatever, it ultimately goes back to Adobe.com. But almost always it says, hey, if you need Adobe Acrobat, click here, or if you need to, Adobe Reader, click here. So it's got a ton of backlinks that say click here. So that's just kind of a real world example of what anchor text can do and how it kind of works. All right, so now we're going to get to this thing called the 4 tiers of backlinks. Okay, now this is the first of, I think, a couple things that may or may not be enlightening to you, but I'll tell you, this is one of the things why my company is so successful in the SEO game, because there's 4 tiers of backlinks. Okay, everybody knows now that you have to get backlinks to your site. They all look different, okay, but there's actually tiers of them, or power levels, if you will, of backlinks. Not every backlink is created equal. Okay, so we're gonna brush over these, and we'll talk about kind of the real world examples of this in another video. All right, so tier 1 links, I call these like the holy grail of backlinks. Okay, they're links from any authority or authority site that's in your niche, and it's super relative. Okay, so you may or may not be familiar with Google PageRank. If you are, just look at something else or listen to something else for a second. If you're not, basically all it is a scale from 0 to 10 that tells you, the user, how much authority that site has in their niche according to Google. Okay, so like YouTube, I think is like an 8 or something. Joe's Pizza Shack blog is probably a 0 or none whatsoever. It's just a way to kind of, for you to know on a numerical scale how important a website is. Okay, so if you could get a link from an authority site in your niche, that would be the greatest thing ever. So if I'm selling blue tennis shoes, and somehow I miraculously got a link on Nike.com, that would be an awesome example of a tier 1 link. Okay, because obviously Nike's an authority site in the sports and tennis shoe niche, and it would be pointing back to my site. So tier 1s are very hard to get. Okay, there's a reason why they hold so much power, is because they're super hard to get. Most of the time it requires you to contact the webmaster, ask if maybe you could do a guest blog post, or get creative and think of some way to get a link on there. But then obviously the webmaster is going to want to know what's in it for them, and you're not going to want to link back to them, because we just learned that. So you're always in kind of like a catch-22 with, well, what do you have to barter with? And if you had something to barter with, you might not be contacting them in the first place. So it's hard to really get a tier 1 link. It's possible, and when you do get them, they're awesome, but don't lay awake at night trying to figure out ways to get tier 1 links. Tier 2 links are from an authority site in any topic or any niche. Okay, so we just talked about a couple good tier 2 links. So that could be YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, or Squidoo. Wikipedia would be a good example of a tier 2 and a tier 1, depending on what Wikipedia page you have. There's another strategy that I'll teach in some other course on how you can get pretty much unlimited links from Wikipedia. But that would be an example of a tier 2 link that holds the authority, but it's not in, like in our example, it's not in the tennis shoe niche or the running niche or whatever. Tier 3 links are basically a link on any website that's highly relevant to your niche, okay, but may not be an authority. So an example of that would be if I had a buddy or another company that I was familiar with that also had, let's say, like a marathon running website or a Ironman website or something like that, that didn't really have a lot of PageRank or a lot of authority, but it had to do with running, and I was able to get a link on there. That would still be a good link, and that would be a tier 3 link. Tier 4 links, I call these the garbage links, but don't let that name fool you. It's basically any link you can get anywhere, and just get links from wherever you possibly can. Now, the word of warning here is these are the lowest value links, and you do not really want to link in any sort of great number to your main site or the site that you're trying to rank with tier 4 links. Okay, especially now after the updates that just occurred. Google's very, very super sensitive to that now. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying they're worthless. There's a way to use them, and we'll get into them later on. But do not just go and blast like a bunch of like forum profiles or like bot links that, you know, link farm type stuff that are very low weight. Don't blast a whole bunch to your main website. Okay, there's a use for them, but putting them right to your money site is not one of them. So in the next couple of videos, we're going to talk about, I guess the next one's coming up is I'm calling it SEO State of the Union. And this is where we're going to go in and talk about the different two updates, Panda and Penguin, what they are, what did they target, and most importantly, what you can do to avoid a penalty, or if you've been penalized, what do you do to kind of fight your way out of it. And that way, you know, that stuff changes all the time, but at least you'll have the basis, and you'll know, you know, kind of the high level of what's going on, so you can kind of plan your online strategy accordingly. So hopefully this, I think this will probably be the longest video at 35 minutes or so. I'm going to try to keep the other ones fairly short, but I felt that it was, you know, important to kind of kick off this course on the right way so everybody's on the same page. And hopefully you learned a couple things. And I guess I'll see you in the next video.